As you can see on Mark13News.com, going back to the beginning of February 2021 to the first of the month, Erdogan moving Turkey toward Russia and China. Turkey being widely believed to be Gomer in Ezekiel chapter 38, where the first 7 verses have to do with the formulation of the alliance of non-Christian nations headed by Edom that will become the bear of Daniel chapter 7 at the woe of the 5th trumpet when the so-called New World Order comes into being. And if you go to the Apocalypse Post newsletter from 2019 called Part 3, you'll see there a more thorough explanation, including a Press TV article from June 24, 2019 called Russia to Take Measures Against Washington's Major New Sanctions on Iran, which is called Persia in Ezekiel 38, and you can see there Russia being a guard unto all the company assembled unto them, as it's written in Ezekiel chapter 38 verse 7, Armenia being Tagorma in the first 7 verses of Ezekiel 38, and on February 4th it was reported a top Russian general met with the Armenian defense minister to discuss Russia's close military ties with Armenia, whose prime minister announced plans to deepen Russian-Armenian ties, saying Armenia needs new security guarantees after the recent war in Nagorno-Karabakh. And then a Tehran Times article says Iran's parliament speaker to visit Russia, a trip aimed at strengthening relations. And going back to Mark13News.com and the post for February 5th, as you can see there, Iran is key for the multipolar world. And the article says the current composition of the Iranian regime is a solid multipolar anchor. The pro-multipolar conservative nationalist forces in Iran control nearly all key institutions of the state. And then skipping down to the next paragraph, Iran's strategic culture will make it hard for the unipolar West to woo Tehran into its camp. There are forces on both sides that will block any potential Iranian defection to the unipolar camp. And notice the neocons in the U.S. Congress are mentioned there, symbolized by the Moabites and the Ammonites, who are the Trotskyite neocons joined together with the Stalinist Democrats as the unipolar nation, so to speak, as opposed to the multipolar headed by Edom, which means red, with Kenites in leadership positions on both sides. Nation shall rise against nation, as in the goat fig nation rising up against itself, because the he-goat of Daniel chapter 8 is the shadow government of the Kenites, and the great horn thereof is the United Nations. And remember, Zbigniew Brzezinski called for an eventual upgrading of the increasingly antiquated UN structures back in 1997 in his book The Grand Chessboard. And then in the 2016 epilogue, he wrote, "The world needs an America that seeks to develop a more multipolar world order, and once the great horn of the he-goat is broken, so to speak, which is the same thing as the destruction of the one who sends a raiser of taxes, and Satan and his angels are cast from heaven to earth at the woe of the 5th trumpet, is when the so-called New World Order will emerge, which is the one world political system written of in Revelation chapter 13, the 7 heads being the 7 mountains, as in the 7 continents of the planet Earth. And notice it'll have 10 horns, which are 10 fallen angel kings that will reign 1 hour with the beast, the 5-month-long hour of temptation, beginning at the woe of the 5th trumpet when Satan and his angels are cast to earth. And then after the one world political system is wounded to death, so to speak, as you can also see in Revelation 13, Satan will appear as the Antichrist in Jerusalem at the woe of the 6th trumpet, which is when the one world political system becomes a one world religious system. And then 2.5 months or 70 evenings later, which is what the 70 years in captivity to the Babylon of old were a type of, the true Christ returns and the battle of Armageddon takes place, as well as the battle of the valley of Hamongog written of in Ezekiel chapter 38, immediately after the 5-month-long hour of temptation when the true Christ returns. And as the true Christ says in the last verse of Mark chapter 13, what I say unto you, I say unto all, watch.